Dr. Queinnise Miller, and this is who I am. I'm just cute.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Book Talk with Dr. Queinnise Miller. I'm your host, Jason Darnell. She is a mom, a former ESL Spanish teacher, an educational leader, a professor in educational leadership, a consultant, an author, an aspiring philanthropist. She's worked in various school districts and served thousands of scholars, teachers, and leaders across the United States. Welcome, Dr. Queinnise Miller. It is so good to see you.
Hey, Jason. Good to see you too.
So you have written a book recently.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how recent it is, but when it's got good content, it's a classic.
It is. In fact, I got an opportunity to read it this past week, and I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the way you organized the book. Of course, I really like the content. I have to say some of it was controversial. I want to talk about that later. I want to start, though, before we get to the book, I want to find out more about you. I want to talk more about you. And I want to ask about the advantages you had growing up. And what I mean by advantages is this. I saw a movie yesterday that had Tom Hanks in it, and he's teaching this woman from Mexico how to drive, and she's having a really hard time. And she's saying, "I can't drive." And he looks at her and he says, "You have 2 children. You're about to have a third. You came here from another country. You learned a new language. You can drive. It's simple." What he did is he lifted up her advantages that she never really thought were advantages to her, right? I want to hear about the advantages you had. You talk about them in the book a little bit that kind of inspired you to be where you are today and to write this book.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good space to give a shout out to one of the advantages that I had, which was a single mother. My mom was a young mother. My parents were young. They were 16, 17 when they had me. And what I know now is that, you don't really know anything. I have a 16-year-old currently, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, for him to have a child. But my mother was a complete advantage. And by the way, she was a complete advantage because her experience and her sacrifice and her commitment and dedication to being a young single mom definitely is one of the reasons why I'm here today. And I want to shout her out because when she got pregnant with me and her life changed. Her life was completely derailed from any dream or vision that she may have had prior to me, right? So one of the things that my mother is super smart. First of all, she is a real estate broker. She owns her own real estate company, Laney Scott Realtors. If you need a house in Dallas, Houston, wherever, you need to, reach out to her and her amazing agents. But she wasn't able to go to college, right? And that was one of the things that my grandmother, rest her soul, I miss her so much, said, you can't go to school now. You need to work and take care of your baby. And that was one of the dreams that she always had. And I just want to shout her out. My mother is 61 years old, and she just graduated with her bachelor's degree last week. So, she is one of the hardest working women that I know, and she was definitely an advantage for me. She taught me more than she probably thinks she did because I don't really listen to her much, at least in public. But she taught me not through what she's said necessarily, just through her actions in her life. So definitely an advantage, a single mom. Yeah. I mean, I could go on about my family.
Right, right. We'll get back to it, I think, because I think it's interchangeable with your career path that you chose as being a teacher and the type of students that you taught, right?
Yeah,
Where your students came from that you talk about,
right.
and we'll get to that. The main thing I think that sticks out, me being an educator as well, the thing that stuck out to me right away in the book that I think is very brave of you to say, besides the title, by the way, uh, the art of giving a shit, is you say scholars don't care about the content that we teach. In a way, I feel like the whole book is wrapped around that statement and that idea. So can you tell us how you came to that conclusion? That scholars don't care about the content that we teach? Like what did you experience that made you come to that conclusion?
So the reality is this, and that is, definitely super controversial because, in education, teaching and learning is the crux of what we do. However, scholars don't care about the content that you teach. What I meant by that was what makes the biggest impact is how you make them feel. What makes the biggest impact is your ability to connect with them. So as you as a human connect with them, then they can connect to your content, right? They care about what you teach them that is going to not just impact what they do sitting in your classroom. They care about what you teach them that's going to impact their life. They don't care about all the time math. And I think about me being in school. Think about it. We're in school from pre-K to, 12th grade. And then if you go to college, you got 4 more years there. And hell, I went, then another 4 years, in my doctorate degree. However, like, I can't tell you, I can barely, do like long division, right? I can't tell you about, all the things that, the history taught us. I can't tell you any of those, but what I can tell you is that Miss Rowland, Miss Henderson, Mr. Jackson, I can tell you about my Professor Jelani. I can tell you about humans that changed my life in school. So I don't know what they taught specifically, right? But I do remember the impacts that they made on my life and the difference that they made in lessons that they taught me, not necessarily always through what they said, but sometimes just what they did, and how they carried themselves. So yeah, after, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Like, it's cliche, but it is real. It's real. And I don't know that we educators spend enough time really cultivating those relationships so that children can connect to content and academia that is going to help them be successful in their future.
So I agree with everything you said. I think you're absolutely right. I had a wonderful opportunity to work with you at your last school, and I think you mirrored that in your daily activities and decisions you made.
Jason, I bet you can tell me about a teacher. Do you remember any of your content, or tell me about a teacher that changed your life?
I had a teacher. So when you apply to be a teacher, how people are like, I want to write about your philosophy in education, right? So the reason I was hired at my first teaching job was because in my essay I wrote that my 8th grade U.S. history teacher did such a terrible job that all I did was sit in that class every day and say, there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a better way to do this. I'm going to do a better way of doing this. I'm going to figure out a better way of doing this. And I wrote that, and it seemed to work out. So that you never know the impact you're going to have on people.
It could go either way, right?
It could go either way.
And I bet you did it a better way.
What'd you say?
I bet you did it a better way.
I'd like to think I did, but this I'm interviewing you. Right? So in the book you talk about your first day, and I think all teachers think the exact same thing you did. Oh, I'm going to go into my classroom and it's going to be shiny white, and I'm going to have all my supplies. They're all going to be lined up. I'm not going to have to pay for any of them. My kids are going to walk in. They're going to be ready to learn. Right. So this is it. So tell me about your experience in your
Listen,
Spanish class.
listen, we set teachers up for failure, not just telling them the real deal of what they're going to experience when they go into the classroom for the first time. I was so excited. I was like, now, mind you, as a Spanish teacher, this wasn't my first rodeo, right? I remember my very first teaching job as a second grade ESL teacher in DISD at Conn Elementary. My principal was Mr. Cooksey. I remember then like being fresh out the package, and I was ACP, right? So I really had no clue other than the few hours that I took around pedagogy, what I was stepping into. And I remember being so, I had this fantasy of what that was going to look like, and I didn't know what I was doing, and it was very stressful. I remember I used to come home every day and just clunk out because I was like, I've never in my life worked this hard, and so that was my very first teaching experience. But going into this Spanish class, I was like, okay, listen, I know what's going on the walls. I had a little experience. I know what's going on the walls. I know I need to go to Target and get me some notebooks because nobody's going to bring a notebook. Let me get my pencils. Let me get what they're going to need. And so in terms of the logistics of the classroom, like I was ready, right? Because I had been in it a few years. What I wasn't ready for as my first year as a Spanish teacher was children not caring about the content, because I was crunk about Spanish, right? Because I had a horrible Spanish teacher in high school, and she thought that I was a horrible Spanish speaker. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to show you one of these days. And, like you just said, right? This teacher inspired me to actually prove her wrong, right? Por eso yo puedo hablar en español. Por eso ya yo puedo hablar en español. And I want to tell her, like, now, ma'am, I can probably speak Spanish a little bit better than you. You didn't believe in me, but now here we go. Anyway, she was horrible, and she was mean. She was so mean. So anyways, after learning Spanish, I was like, a Spanish teacher? Like, these children need to be bilingual. And mind you, I'm at a school that is predominantly African American, and Hispanic. But I had all the African American children, and because I was teaching Spanish 1 at the time. And so I was like, oh, they're going to love this Spanish. Well, no, they had to get Spanish credits. They didn't care about learning Spanish, Jason. They didn't care about learning Spanish. What they cared about was that credit, right? And it burst my bubble because, for a very long time, I've lived in a bubble, thinking life was one way. And so there's many bubbles that I got burst in that time of my life, around men, around friends, but definitely teaching, right? And so it burst my bubble because they didn't care. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? If you're not excited about learning Spanish, what am I supposed to do? You don't want to be here, right? And so it was difficult to try to realize that what I wanted and what I thought wasn't the reality. So now what? So now what? Right? I still have 130 kids looking at me every single day, wondering what is happening, not wanting to be there necessarily. So the question was always, how can I make a difference in their lives? What does that look like? And teach Spanish.
And teach Spanish, a required course that
a required course.
They have to take. You talk about that. So I want to change subjects here for a second. I want to talk about how you organize the book, because it's not just a book, it's a guidebook, right? So tell us how you constructed this into a guidebook that a new teacher can actually go through pretty easily and use in their classroom.
So here's the deal, Jason. First of all, if you know me, anyone that knows me that's on here knows that I enjoy talking and I enjoy telling my story. And so, but I also think that it's important that we tell our stories. And that's just not in education, but that's in every area of our lives. People need to tell their stories because it is through other people's stories that you're able to learn lessons that you don't have to learn the hard way. You can learn from other people's experiences. And so my time as a Spanish teacher not only, I believe, changed the lives of those that I served, but it changed my life. I learned a lot from those kids. I learned a lot from that situation. I grew a lot. And so I wanted to share, it's one thing to talk about loving children and, building relationships and, and cultivating environments where children, feel safe to learn. You can talk about it all day. What I wanted to do in the memoir portion of this is actually share how I did it, right? What did that actually look like? Hence the memoir part, right? Here is what it looked like in the classroom. Here is how I did that and the impacts that it had, right? So that's the memoir portion where I open up each chapter with the story, right? And then after the story, then I have this space called Teacher Confidential, right? This Teacher Confidential where it's, like people don't tell you this part, but I'm gonna give you all the tea. I'm giving all teachers, new, old, I'm giving all leaders, I'm giving parents, I'm giving you the tea on the real information that you need to know that actually connects to the story, right? And so in the confidential, in the toolbox, there's a teacher confidential, you got a teacher toolbox, and then there's sometimes like a Q&A portion of the book where I really surface what is the actual concept that you need to take away from the story that I told. It's kind of cool.
No, I really liked it. I liked it. You include links to sites, books, professors, even to research and their research and things they've done.
Say hi.
Hey, mine came in too.
Bye.
Got to hear her.
I love you.
I had to get her out of here.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Mine's.
I'm a mom. I'm a mom first.
Yes, I'm a dad.
That's my Niley. Yeah. What's your baby's name?
Her name is Aria, and she was in here a little bit ago, and she screamed at me because I wanted her to get out. So I apologize for that. For that.
Those rule you. Those girls rule you.
They do. They do. They
Mine
do.
thinks she does, but I keep telling her I'm the queen, but she misses that memo every day.
So back to your book. In your book title, this is a book for urban educators. Okay, so what's it like to be an urban educator? Why is it different from being an educator? In other words, why was it so important for you to include that word?
Very good question, Jason Darnell. So the reality is, when I wrote the book, that's when, urban education and urban work was kind of being kind of like a buzzword. But the reality is the book is about how you serve children, really all children, but specifically, I'm talking about the children that that are culturally, linguistically, economically disadvantaged or diverse children, right? Now, those children you can find in urban school districts, you can find them in rural school districts, you can find them in suburban school districts. But I'm specifically talking about those kids because the reality is there's this notion of the different environments that children are able to learn in, and you've got children that are field independent and field dependent. And this is work done by Dr. Tanner, who was one of my professors, that I kind of really, mirrored my work behind. And these field dependent and field independent children, they can be Black, they can be white, they can be rich, they can be poor, they can be blue or green. But field independent children are children that really are not that dependent on the environment, the teacher, the setting, the field, the ambiance, those things to be able to be successful. Those are field independent children. Anyone can come in the classroom. It doesn't really matter where they are. There's something that's very intrinsic in them that they're able to just move. Mickey Mouse could be their teacher. It really doesn't even matter who's there. They're going to be successful, right? Or they come from a specific family where though there's just certain habits that they have that they don't necessarily need someone to connect with them to be able to learn. However, then you have these children that are field dependent, right? And field dependent children, they must have strong relationships with children. They must have, with teachers, they must have environments where they feel safe. They must have environments where they're able to connect who they are every single day and on the inside of them to where they're learning, right? And that is very important. So the children that I serve, and 9 times out of 10, not all the time, and I don't like to speak in absolutes, but the majority of children that are very dependent around the things around a relationship and environment and connection are children who come from culturally diverse backgrounds, right? And so that was the reason. But the reality is the content and the work that's in this book is true for all children. All children need to know that you care. You need to love all children. And I've been evolving with this notion of love and what that looks like, sounds like, and feels like. But I don't know if we'll be able to get to that today. But all children need that on some level. It just looks different. Hashtag differentiation. I talk a little bit about that in the book. You see my hashtag?
No, I the hashtag brought me back. It brought me back. Brought me back. So I, like I said, I've been lucky enough to work with you at your last school, and you're big on leadership. I believe that your PhD is in leadership. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
So, and I know a professor from the book. A professor really inspired you to. He said there were leaders, and there's wimps, and there's cowards.
Oh.
Right?
Warriors, wimps, and cowards.
I know you chose to be a leader. Oh my goodness. Where does that come from? It doesn't just come from him, right? I know you talk about having a great relationship with your father. And I know we've talked about your mother. I don't know where that comes from. Where does it come from? Why is that so important to you? Because it is so important to you. You know it within 15 minutes of meeting you.
You know, Darnell, I've had the luxury of being raised by some pretty phenomenal people throughout my family. My family, hasn't always doesn't come from, this high, rich, background, but my family is rich in character. My family is rich in pride. My family is rich in being innovative and taking risks and huge in faith. And so definitely I would say that my belief and the importance of leadership definitely stems from my family, and specifically my father, who I definitely love very much. My entire family, my father, my mother, I have an amazing second mother, have village mothers, my sisters. Like, I literally could talk all day about my family, but specifically my father and my mother and my stepmother were the people that showed me what not just love was, not just leadership, but leading with love. And Jason, you've heard me say that often. I have a t-shirt actually that says lead with love. But they modeled for me what it meant to, one, lead with love and to love children. And so, being a only child with my mother, being a single mom, and being the oldest, my father and his wife I had 2 sisters. I was the only. I was the oldest, and at my village mother's house, I was the youngest, right? So I'm the oldest, and the youngest, with the people that directly had an impact on raising me daily. But my father truly showed me what leadership looked like, in the sense that, there's people that have children with women that they do not marry all the time. It happens, but it doesn't. It takes a man, but it takes a leader to be able to set an expectation of ensuring that everyone involved is going to do what's best for children. Everyone involved is going to do what's best for me, the child, right? And so he wasn't necessarily always he wasn't always popular with every stakeholder within that space, but he knew what needed to be done for the child, and he held everyone accountable to ensure that they were playing the role and the part that was necessary for me to be successful. And that leadership, it speaks to me in a very, very real way. But the reality is, Jason, is that leadership makes a difference. I've worked under some of the most amazing leaders, and I've had some horrible leaders. And the one thing that is true is that leadership, the quality of the leader impacts the quality of the organization, right? And so I take leadership very seriously, because if we don't get it right, if leaders do not have the ability to step up and fight and advocate for what's best for children, to hold people accountable, to have high expectations, and to care about those that they lead, then they will harm. They will do more hurt than they do help to those that they serve. And leadership is it's a ministry. It's a privilege. Leadership isn't something you get to do because you're in a position. It is a privilege to be able to lead others. And so I'm just super, super, I take it really seriously, Jason Darnell. You already
No,
know
I
that.
love it. I love it. If you don't mind, I want you to share how you've kind of transferred that mindset to your own family with your two children. I understand you have board meetings.
Yeah.
Do you want to share something about that, or is that too?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I have a special friend, and one day he and I were talking, and he made mention of, spending quality time with my kids. And I'm going to be honest with you. When he first said it, I thought, who does he think he's talking to? I'm with my kids all the time. I'm currently now a single mother. I have nothing but love for my ex-husband. He and I, we do our best to partner together for our children. But, being a single mom is not easy. And another shout out to my mother, because I didn't know how hard it was until I knew how hard it was, right? You ever heard the saying, just keep living? Just keep living, Jason.
Absolutely, that's
Uh,
all we got to do. That's
I
all
just
there
kept
is to do.
living. And so, so he says this, and he suggests a book. And one of the things that I love about us is that we, you've heard, I have a t-shirt that says, if you're not reading, you're not leading, right? And so I think it's important, specifically leaders, right? Leaders and teachers and people who are serving others. You got to read. You've got to really challenge your thoughts, challenge your beliefs, challenge your outlooks on things, so that you can continue to grow. But I digress. So he recommends his book called The Family Board Meeting, and it's definitely a recommendation that I have for everyone. And the family board meeting essentially means that you are spending quality time with your kids to build those relationships. This will be really cool for teachers to do, but you spend quality time, and so it's 4 hours every 90 days, 4 hours every 90 days, where you are just doing what your children want to do, not what you want to do, not what you want them to do, not what you think they should do, but you are doing what they want to do. Because when you love and care about somebody, it's not always loving and caring about them the way that you know how to do that. It's what they need that really actually is the action of love, right? So whatever they want to do, 4 hours, no cell phones, no TV, no technology,
You got
just
to get pushback. You
them.
got to get pushback on that.
You know what's funny is the very first time we were both, all of me, both of my kids. So you do it separately, right? So I had one with Langston, one with Niall, and
Oh, okay. I thought you did it with
we're
both of
like,
them at the same time.
no, it's separate because they're individuals, right? They're individual children. They have individual needs, right? So the very first one, we were like, oh my God, is this 4 hours up? Like this is long. But now we've had like 5 board meetings and they look forward to them. They're excited about them.
Oh, that's awesome.
They're
That's
like, Mom, all right, it's time. Let's turn these phones off. And now my daughter, I'll be honest, she likes to like go buy stuff. I had to give her like a $50 budget. Like you cannot spend more than
that's a
$50.
board meeting I like. Yeah.
Listen, $50 is probably too much. I need to go down to 25, especially now that I'm this wonderful professor at University of Houston, Clear Lake. You know, I got to make some different decisions. But I love my job. I love my work. I love the work. But
Yeah.
so yeah, it's and you know what? The thing is, I'll say this is that as leaders, as teachers, in this work in education, it's not about what we say. We've got to be able to model the things that we talk about. And I'm not perfect, Jay. I have my stuff, and I'm growing every single day. But I I definitely think it's important that we walk the walk, and try every single day to, and to create spaces where we're building really, really authentic relationships with people that we love.
Yes, absolutely. I want to take a second here to invite our audience to ask any questions they have. They can just type them, I believe,
Oh, perfect.
in the chat.
Whoever asks the first question, I'm going to give them free. I'm going to mail them a free book.
Mail them a free book. That's fantastic.
Or a shirt if they already have the book.
It's worth it. I'm not just saying that. I really enjoyed it. But I'm going to go ahead and ask you a question because I know people are shy and people need to think of question, and I'm going to ask you another question while people are typing in their questions, and then we'll take a peek and see if someone's asked a question for you. You talked about how you had your stuff. Everybody has their stuff. I just finished a book called The Myth of Normal. And I know I'm going to butcher this doctor's name, but it's Dr. Gabor Mate. Yikes. It's something like that. But there's a quote in the book that made me think of you. It went like this. It went like, trauma is not what happens to us. It's what happens inside of us. Right? And it got me thinking to your chapter on discipline. It got me thinking to when I worked for you and we talked about discipline, how this is not something personal. I forgot what you call it in the book, but it's something about removing your personal lens, something like that. Like when children misbehave or act out or even are aggressive towards you, you immediately it's not about you, right? This is something happening inside them. Will you talk about that?
Absolutely. So there was some work from there's a lot of work on trauma. There's a lot of research around what's going on with our kids. But one of the, and I'm trying to actually, I would love to just kind of to actually read it. But one of the things that, I look at these TikToks, okay, because my children are on TikToks, and some of the stuff that is going on in schools with children and with teachers, because I really think that teachers and educators that are ineffective or that don't like children create trauma for children, right? And I also think that sometimes children and their behaviors can create trauma for teachers, right? I don't think that it is only one way, right? But what we have to understand is that everybody is dealing with something, and trauma and things that truly have impacted your life. And when people act out towards you, it doesn't it has nothing to do with you most of the time. A lot of it has to do with what has happened to them, right? And I'm going to read this verbatim. Um, and so I just I I want to read it. Okay. I had a student, and this student, I remember, and I don't know if I think I talk about this in the book, but I remember her coming to the class, and she and I went back and forth. I swear I was going to catch a 187 with this little girl because she was taller than me, she was bigger than me, and she came in my classroom. And I remember she straight up called me a bitch. Like, she was like coming at me, and I was like, I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gonna lose my job with this little girl. And she was just mean. She came in when she felt like it. She thought that she ran the whole entire school. You understand?
The girls are
So
always much tougher than the boys, I think.
listen, the girls are
I would
so
have rather had a classroom of the worst boys in the school.
the girl drama, it is something. But she was dealing with a lot. You know, her mother was on drugs. She was the youngest child of six, seven kids. She, you know, was going from place to place, home to home. Like, she had experienced a lot of trauma. And if I had just taken her behaviors personal, right, then either I would have been out of a job. She would have, you know, her life wouldn't have been the same because of, you know, the damage I would have done to her. But I had to stop and recognize it wasn't about me, right? And to be very intentional about getting to know the human that was behind the aggression, the you know, the attacks, right? Because there was someone behind that. And as I got to know the girl behind it, now I'm telling you, she is still in my life. I just talked to her yesterday. We go eat crawfish, and she had a little girl, and that girl gives her all of what she gave me times 10. So it's really fun to watch.
That's how it works.
It's really fun to watch, but I she made a difference in me getting past myself, right? And my emotions and my feelings, to be able to get past her trauma, to be able to get to know her. So yeah.
That's, you know, I think that's one of the magical things about being a teacher, that story you just shared, where you have this student that comes in one way and ends up another, and
Yeah.
you see that change and that growth that you want to see.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh, we have our first question, and I understand this question. Go ahead.
Before I do want, if you have the book, it's on page 73, where it talks about being trauma informed, and the concept that typically children's stress may be coming outside of the school. We've got to let children be able to de-escalate. It's never about the issue at hand. So sometimes kids and teachers, and there's conflict about the smallest things, like a pencil, or you know what I mean, or something like that, and that's not the issue, or a friend or a girlfriend or whatever, but it goes much deeper than that, and it takes a caring educator to take the time to do that. Most times with trauma, it's a brain issue, not a behavioral issue. Incorporate regulatory activities into the culture of the classroom, and discipline is to teach, not to punish, right? We're not there so kids can get it, you know, they got it, I'm gonna get them, you know. I could have just, you know, made sure that she learned her lesson, but my job was to teach her how to deal with anger, to teach her how to navigate through the frustration, to teach her how to sit in the pain and actually be able to work through it so that she can live her life. Because when children, you're not taught how to do that, they are, you know, they're inundated by the pain and the experiences that sometimes it wasn't even their fault. So I know I'll stop talking now so we can get questions. I'm excited about them. No, but thank you. Page 73.
I think everything you said was very valuable. And that was the part of the book I was talking about. So your first question is, How did you learn Spanish?
Pues yo aprendí español en España. I went to school to be a pharmacy major, and my mother will tell you that I was going to make some money. I worked at CV. It was Eckerd at the time. Like I had a whole plan, but I hated it, and I was not very good at biology, and I ended up changing my major. And I first went to undecided. If anybody is here watching that's going to college, it's okay to go in undecided because you don't even know, you don't know yourself enough to kind of sometimes know what you want your life plan to be. And so I changed my major I went to undecided, and I just really prayed, and God's like, well, what do you enjoy doing? And I thought I enjoyed Spanish. Like I enjoyed that space, even though the teacher wasn't all that great. I enjoyed the space. And so I thought, how cool would it be to like graduate, being bilingual, and like what opportunities would it afford me? So I changed my major to Spanish at the University of Houston, go Cougs. And from that space, and what's funny is my sophomore year in high school, my hardworking mother again helped me, and my family helped me to be able to go to Spain in high school. I went to Spain there, and I loved it. It changed my life. Study abroad, everyone needs to do it. And then when I went to college, I lived in Spain for about 6 months and became pretty fluent and bilingual, in Spanish. And
That'll
so,
teach you real fast.
yeah, and I think it's kind of a talent. I really want to learn French. And so, but I need to go somewhere. But I want to learn French, but like I can't sing, even though my heart feels like I can. I'm not that great of a dancer. My
That's all that
daughter's a great
matters. That's
dancer,
all that matters.
but I can pick up on languages pretty well. So
That is a skill. That is definitely a skill for sure. Next question we have for you, and I think it's a great one. I think it's one that many schools have been trying to answer is, how do you help teachers communicate with bilingual students?
I'm going to say this as a Spanish language learner, and in schools, we are dealing with most English language learners. We have to first go in with understanding that them speaking another language is not a deficit. It is not something that makes them less than. It is not something that is a handicap, but it is a superpower. And I'm going to say that the mindset there is super important to have, so that you understand that their ability or them being able to communicate in a different language actually enhances their opportunities in learning, right? That's one thing. The second thing is it's vocabulary and it's visuals, right? Vocabulary and visuals, because they live life. And so being able to show pictures and music, pictures and music, right? Those are two very, very universal things that people understand and that they know. And the only thing now that's missing is how do you say this word? Like, what's the word for it? It's really simple in my head, but it's just, I think those are very important things. Know that it is a superpower, and use visuals, use music, use things like that to be able to help them connect to what they already know. And that will help them learn and be able to communicate in English or whatever language, whichever way you're going. You're muted. No puedo oírte.
I've thought I made it the entire time without doing that. I was so happy about that. And then I couldn't make it the whole time. I'm so sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. It's through our mistakes that we become marvelous.
That is correct. That is correct. Okay, so one of my favorite parts of the book, and we were almost at an hour. Maybe we should wrap up here soon, but I'm having such a good time. I'm going to ask you another question.
Okay, cool.
Oh, wait, hold on. We have someone else here. We have another question. And I think they're more important than what I was going to ask. Is this from Mr. Thorne? This is from Sean Thorne. This is a question from Mr. Thorne.
Oh, one of my favorite people in the whole world. Man. Hey, Mr. Thorne. He's got a good heart,
But it was look, it was like I talked about you with leadership. You knew it within 5 minutes meeting the man. He was a good man.
And he loves children. That is what he does. He loves children. It's an honor to work with him.
He is asking, how can you change the morale of a school campus when the leadership doesn't want it or is not trying to build it in the school district environment?
Oh, Um, I'll just say again that leadership makes a difference. And Flip Flippin wrote a book that is one of my favorite books called The Flip Side. And it basically says that the constraint of the leader is the constraint of the organization. And so that's why it's so important for leaders to really be self-reflective and look within themselves as to why they're doing what they're doing, and understanding who it is that their leadership impacts. It makes a difference. And so my answer to that would be just, and sometimes you just have to do what you know is right. We can't always control leadership. Some people get positions, and in those positions they feel like those positions give them power, but the reality is that the people should have the power, and any power that a leader has should be disseminated to the people. But positions don't make you powerful. Purpose makes you powerful, right? And so being able to walk and understand the purpose for children is important, but you just got to walk in your own purpose. You've got to do what it is that you want the leader to do, because it's when you don't do that work, then you are no better than the person or the leader that's you know what I mean, not doing it. So we got to stay in our lanes. We got to just do what we know is the right thing to do.
Um, we have another question, and this is a great question. It's from Crystal Williams. I want to tell a story about this first. She asks, "What do you do to inspire the burnt out, tapped out, uninspired adults?" So when I first met you, it was not a great time in my life, and I was going through something. And throughout the many months that we were together and worked together, you inspired me. And I think the way you did that was you believed in me. And you always told me that I was stronger than I thought I was and that I could do it. So I want to thank you for that before you answer this question. So go ahead and answer the question now.
That is the answer, Jason. That's the answer, right? The reality is, specifically for adults and teachers in this work. First of all, let me say this. I am so sorry. I should have did this at the top of the hour. Happy Staff and Teacher Appreciation. Appreciation Week. You deserve a year. You deserve some months. But like, I must read this little small excerpt in the book to teachers, but I'll do it at the end when you give me an opportunity. But you teachers, adults are no different than children, right? Everyone wants to know, and everyone needs to know that they're special. Everyone needs to know that they have purpose. Everyone needs to know that God made them specifically the way they are to make an impact on children or whatever it is that they do, right? So you have to be very intentional about inspiring adults. You have to be very intentional, more importantly, about appreciating adults, right? Because we do this work, and this work is not easy. This work is hard. It's long hours. It's not a lot of money. It's a lot of sacrifice. People are sacrificing their own children to do work for other people's children. And not many people or leaders or organizations are thanking them enough. We wait until, the Teacher Appreciation Week, and no shade on Teacher Appreciation Week, but it should be Teacher Appreciation every week in some shape, form, or fashion. For me, this may be controversial, but I try to feed teachers all the time. I wanted to feed them. I wanted to gift them. What can I give you? Time? Can I give you, what is it that I can do to show appreciation? Sometimes just a thank you. I used to write little hand notes, just randomly to just say thank you, right? And so this work is hard, and also you got to have good leadership. Good leadership inspires people to do a lot of stuff. Good leadership in education and in all over the world, you have got to have effective, caring, loving leaders. Not saying that you're be a pushover, right? Because things have to get done and you have to lead with love and accountability. However, Like good leadership, bad leadership can suck people dry. The work is already hard. Children need a lot, right? And so when you're being sucked from children and you're being sucked from leadership, like teachers they're not gonna make it in this work, right? And so
Need a lot of deposits.
you need a lot of deposits. You need a lot of deposits. But the reality is leaders don't always get deposits.
Nope.
And so leaders don't always have what they need to be able to deposit into other people, which is, I'm doing some writing. I'm going to do some publishing on a leadership coaching framework that deposits in the leader, right? Because that's super important so that it's a cycle, right? And it all runs down. And so there can be love running down in deposits, or there could be strife, there could be stress, and there could be pressure, and things like that. So,
Yeah, no. I totally, I lived that. I lived that.
You got me preaching.
Yes. I do what you're preaching. So listen, I'm going to ask one more question, and then what I want to do is I want you to read an excerpt from your book. Your favorite excerpt. So be thinking of what you want to share with the time we have left, which is about 10 minutes. But we do have one more question here. How does the school create a welcoming environment that allows families of color to be active partners in the education process?
Oh, that is a
I had a friend of mine. I had a friend of mine said, "You show me a good PTO, and I'll show you a fantastic school." Right? So
you know what? Well, first of all, yes. Right. Shout out to all the PTOs in all the world, right? When parents, and I actually talk about this in the book, that when parents and teachers and leaders get on the same page and are working together for children, like magic can happen, right? But the reality is there are parents and communities that don't have the luxury to be able to engage in the same ways because they have to work. Let me just take me, for example. I love my children. And now that I have a different role, I have more opportunities to be involved. I was the classroom mom this year. Can you believe it?
I bet you were great, though. I bet you were great.
I was probably a bootleg classroom mom, but they were like, "You the classroom mama?" I was like, "Yes, Lord, help me."
And then you start speaking Spanish, and they're like, "Whoa!"
I know, right? I know. So I would say this is that in communities of color, you have to be able to, and this is, I don't know how much, as much as is color or class, right? But in communities where you have parents that don't have the luxury to be the classroom mom or to go in and be super active, you bring those opportunities for engagement either to the parents community. You partner with churches. You create, for example, when in the schools that I led, I was always very intentional about making sure that things happened at night. And it was connected to things that I knew that our kids love to do, right? Because if you want parents and kids to come, you want to have activities and things that they are able to connect to. So there was music, there's food, there's, performances. People love to see their children perform, right? Performances. What is it that the community cares about? And that is what you need to be able to impart and place into the work that you do at your campus. There's, and it can be very simple. The reality is that people sometimes, and not everybody, okay? Now, remind you, I'm not talking about any specific person, so I don't want to offend anybody. However, sometimes offense is necessary. But I'll say, because people work or they have challenging backgrounds, they don't have a lot of money, or they have trauma, or whatever is going on in their family, it doesn't mean they don't love their kids. People love their children. And I'm not saying that there's not some, I could say some trifling parents, but people do what they know to do. Parents are trying and giving their very best every single day. They're giving us their best and they're doing their best. And just because their best doesn't always measure up to what we think and how we think it should look doesn't mean that they don't care, right? And so they're doing their best. But I'll say this, Jason, and I say this in my book, and it is very controversial. I may lose some friends and some people may come off of the book talk, but I'll say that I don't depend as an educator on parents. Parents are nice, parents are great, but every single day we have children in our schools, sometimes 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. We are the answer. And that is a great transition into the excerpt that I would like to read. Would you like to hear?
That's fantastic. I don't even have to say, go ahead. We got about 5 minutes.
And this is the very last page of the book, page 125. And I say, teachers, not parents, make the biggest impact in the life of a child. This is a special power, and we must use these powers for good and not evil. Because again, we have human lives in our hands. Human lives. I know that the work is hard and sometimes not acknowledged as it should be, but educators matter. We are the magic. We are the sauce. We are the people who make the difference for children. They need you and are looking for that one teacher, that one principal, that one support staff, that one secretary, that one janitor, that one nurse, that one cafeteria worker. They're looking for that one teacher that will push them to change the world. To do this work, all you need to do for the humans that you serve is show up, love your scholars as if they were your own flesh and blood, inspire, and be more than the content that you teach. And finally, you just got to give a shit. Be blessed.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And everyone that has joined us, thank you very, very much. This is a what day is it? This is a Monday night, and having your attendance is greatly, greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
Dr. Miller, will you please let everyone know what's going on with you here coming up? Because I know you got a lot of stuff coming up, some appearances, some maybe hints of another book coming out. What's going on?
Absolutely. So the few things I have coming up, I am actually about to have an opportunity to share this work. I believe that this is God's work. God is love, and loving children is what we need to do. And I can't wait to be able to really go deeper into what that actually means in actions. But I'll be speaking in Greece, in Athens, Greece. I know, I'm excited about this work, about the content of this book. And what does that look like internationally? So I'm super excited about that. In addition, on the 20th of May, I will be speaking at a conference here that is local here in at the University of Houston. Yeah, at the University of Houston. It's Ron Clark will be speaking there. And finally, I hope I get a chance to meet Ron Clark and like dap him up, because I've seen him but I hadn't been able to give him a whole dap and a hug. So I'm excited about that. And what's funny, that used to be a goal of mine, a dream of mine, to be able to share a space with him. And so I just thank God for that opportunity. So the 2023 Education Explosion Conference here in Houston. So I hope that I see you there. And then finally, I've been having this book in my heart. It is called, We Can't Make This Shit Up: Real Stories from Real Educators. And the purpose of the book is for people to tell what's happening in schools. I don't think that everyone understands the gravity of the work that teachers are taking on when they decide to be teachers. I don't even think teachers understand it when they first come in. But I would love for people to be able to share their stories, what's going on, what is happening, some things that may be funny, some things that may be, sad, some things that, make huge impacts on the lives of the people in those, in those spaces. And so I want to hear people's stories, and I want to publish those stories so that those that are not educators can, policymakers, you have parental groups that are huge influencers on what happens in schools, and you have board members, you have different people that are making impacts that directly impact the classroom and have no idea what's happening. And so I will hope this book is able to share some insight there for educators. So that's what I
I
got
didn't mean
coming
to
up.
interrupt you, Queinnise. I'm so sorry, but can you please tell us where we can buy your current book?
Absolutely. You can go to www.queinnise.com. It's scrolling across, and there you can purchase the book, and it'll be actually a autographed book. Of course, you can get the book from wherever else you want to get it, but it won't be a signed autograph book. So you want that. But you can get it on Amazon, Audible. I'm reading it. So if you want to listen to the book, I know my voice, you know what I mean? It's kind of,
Now I regret that I got it on Kindle because you can't sign a Kindle book, but
I can't sign the Kindle.
I'll get a signed copy.
I'll see if I can hook you up.
Well,
But yes, www.queinnise.com.
it was fantastic to have you on. It was very, very fun. I hope everyone else had a great time. And we will see you in the future.
Thank you so